Good morning to everyone. Before anything else, a very, very warm welcome to India Fashion Forum 16. It's been 16 years since we've been at it. And this time round, I think we come in with a very, very interesting mix, both in terms of the stores and designer brands that we're profiling, in terms of the economic context we've got going ever since we stepped into this year, which has been challenging, to say the least, and also in terms of the new stepping stones that we're setting out for ourselves as we discuss the agenda and really the mission statement of what one hopes to achieve in the retail and fashion business. So let me tell you a little bit about how we've made the journey so far, and then we can kick off with proceedings. For the past 16 years, basically, since the year 2000, IFF has been arguably India's most exciting, looked forward to dynamic event that really seems to showcase and bring together everything that fashion embodies. So here we are. It's a congregation of some mind-blowing talks, discourses. Today, 16 years, as you know, where India is not just the fastest growing consumer market, it's also the fastest growing economy in the world. And in the context of what's happening with global economies, I think that's an extremely powerful statement to make, and that also presents a huge business opportunity for anyone who's in the consumer business at whichever end. It's also a sobering time, and I just want to drive through a couple of points on why it seems more sobering at this point. We all want to make the most of tremendous expansion in this consumer spending and aspirational mode that we have going. We've also got a dramatically changing consumer, as all of you would know much better than me. You're in the firing line, so to speak, and you know what it's like. Tastes are changing. The way people go out and shop is changing. There is this constant comparison and competition between brick and mortar on the one hand and what's happening with online e-tailing businesses really on the other hand. So what we're trying to do at IFF 2016 is that we're trying to break this down into 7 major bullet points that we hope to discuss over the next couple of days through many of our speakers and discourses and conversations. So let me quickly highlight for you what it is that we've got going over here. The first thing is intuitive technology, how to think smart, how to get technology on your side, and also how to make it a much more seamless experience for every consumer that seems to hit either your store or your website. Intelligent sourcing, most importantly, it should not damage your margins. It should be predictable, timely, all those things. A seamless experience, as I mentioned before. Brand alive, which some of our speakers will be detailing today. Open thought and mind. Really, India, I think, is unlike any other market, maybe like China in its unpredictability. So I think that really requires us to think on the go. Human connect, which is the most important tenet of any business, really. It's not just about fashion and consumers. I think even if you were in a steel industry, it really is about the human connect. And alpha brandsters, which is also something our guests will be talking about. Tech is at the top of the list, as you might have noticed. And the last is alpha brandsters. It basically means a powerful, iconic brand creation. That's really what we're focusing on today. But we're also looking at smart sourcing. We're looking at an in-store experience, which is what a lot of evolved consumers today who are going to some of the high-end malls are really looking for. It's an omni-channel excellence and knowledge. All that really goes into the mix of what we've got going for ourselves today. So over the next couple of days, that's what you're going to participate in. That's what you're going to be looking at. And really, we're going to be looking at creating a new future of fashion, perhaps, in India. Without any further ado, let me kick off proceedings for today. I think the most important thing in any industry or in any business really is profitability. As I mentioned earlier, while it is an extremely dynamic stage for Indian fashion, I think it also comes at a point where the economy is at crossroads. We have had a miserable start to 2016. As anyone who's been part of the stock market might know, it hurts, and it hurts where you don't like it. Which makes fashion quite vulnerable because that is seen as the last step, the first thing you tend to hive off or carve off when you're looking to cut costs. So this really is the focal point of how we're kicking off the conversation today. It's talking about profitability in the fashion space. What are brands like Zara and H&M doing? How is it that they seem to have such high returns per square feet? And is there a model really that one can embody while looking at those formats? So let me invite on stage Devashish Mukherjee. He's head of consumer and retail, AT Kearney, and he hopefully is going to shed some light on that topic. Devashish.
Good morning, everybody. I wanted to speak to you today about what is really going to drive growth and profitability in this industry, and touch upon some of the points which should be important themes in the conference going forward. The first thing I want to say, I just want to get over with this quickly in terms of numbers. I think numbers-wise, India, globally and from even within India, looks fine. The growth projected for the next 5 years is a couple of points lower. It's supposed to be around 12%. It used to be about 15, 16%. But I don't think that's the big news I want to talk about today. That growth will happen for a variety of reasons. Because of the demographics, the younger folks purchasing more, much more than many of us. The increasing fashion consciousness, so people wanting to try different things. Premiumization gets you more value growth, even if it's not volume growth. And of course, you have more and more access through the internet, e-commerce, and so on and so forth, and people going down the city types. But these are not very new or interesting things. I just wanted to lay the context that there is going to be growth. But what we should talk about today is how are we prepared for that growth and how will we service that growth profitability. These are the two things we should talk about. I'm like you in the industry, so it's not that I have all the answers, but I will share some perspectives, and if we have some time for discussion, we can talk about it. I think there are 3 very important charts. It's cluttered up, but let me take you through each of them. The first big point is that if you see the topmost left chart, we will have a real middle class in 7 to 8 years. So what is the middle class? It is that gray bucket which is 23% in 2025, which are the strivers. People who will earn in today's terms 5 to 10 lakh rupees per annum. Because our research is showing folks who are anyway earning more than 10 lakhs today, they are not buying not because they don't have money. None of you have lost your jobs, you all are getting some steady increments. It's either you don't need more, or there's not enough new in the market. So our thesis is that the people who will drive this market is what is this middle class, and for the first time in the history of India, 23%. So if you take 5 lakhs and above, it's almost going to be half the population, and that I think is very, very exciting. Right now, as you can see, it's just 9%, and that's why all these value formats, hypermarkets, nothing seems to be working right. 2, let's look at the demographics on the right-hand side. The point I want to mention here is that while we will be spending a lot of time at this forum talking about today's customers, but the fact is that the folks who are going to be 25 years, 10 years from now are 15 years today, and the folks who are 15 years today are only 5 years old right now. So what are you all doing as apparel brands to have that stretch? Unfortunately, because of confidentiality reasons and other proprietary reasons, I can't talk about brands. But there are so many brands we have grown up on which we don't use today. The footwear brands stand out, the car brands stand out, the apparel brands stand out, right? What is it that you all are doing today which will not make it happen to the bottom 30%? 300 million customers who really don't know these adult brands. What will you really do about it? That is the big question number 2. The third big tectonic change is, though it's not a humongously different number, but the women in our workforce are increasing. And that's something I want to talk about just a little while later. But I just feel we all as a community have to give women and women's apparel much, much more focus than we have today, right? And these are the big stumbling blocks, we believe, to success in the future. If you have to look at it holistically, there are 7 things we can talk about. I will move over some of these quickly and some I will spend some time on. So the first is, how do you create new fields of play to be successful? Just the shirt and the pant and the blue shirt I'm wearing is probably very old, right? 2 is, what are the avenues to differentiate? 3rd is, with no pun intended, how can you tailor your assortment, designs, options to different customer segments, cities, and so on and so forth, right? The 4th is, how do you leverage digital? Because I don't think anybody can win without successfully mastering that. Finally, fast fashion capabilities, agility, and with India's supply chain and poor economics and scale, how do you really manage that? And finally, design for cost, which is a very pet topic of mine. I'm just going to make a couple of important points and try and keep some time at the end for questions. The first point about new areas of play, I mean, I don't want to get into micro segments and all that. You all do that for your business, and that's fine. India is the only market in the world where menswear is higher than women's wear. I don't know if you know that, but these are the numbers. That is changing, that's changing fast. This is the first year in India, I believe, I mean, if the numbers are correct, where men and women have come up to be roughly 37% each. That has to be verified, and then women's is supposed to move forward. But how many women's organized brands do you see? I mean, personally, I don't see too much, and the folks who are there are in like very, very niche segments, right? And we see these large men apparel brands. And part of it is the supply problem of capital, it's a supply problem of design, it's a supply problem of just design sensibilities, but this is a huge gap. So as a result, a large part of women, and the good part about young demographics is that global fashion works. Global fashion, we don't think works beyond 40 years of age as it is right now. So a lot of the consumption of global sensibilities and design is by the quote-unquote the youth. And there is a tectonic opportunity there for large retailers. That is this point. The other part is continue to work on white spaces, talk about it, whether it's sports, whether it's plus size, whatever. I mean, you can find it based on occasion, based on time of day. All kinds of FMCG kind of marketing in terms of creating niches and making you buy is going to happen. And therefore, we believe it's not so much about the idea, but the marketing and the awareness created around all these opportunities you all need to continue to do. This is not a great point, and I'm not going to, great as in it's not a new point. You all are doing it. But this has to continue to be able to grow the business. That's why food is going on increasing. It's not that any of us need any more calories, but there are more choices, there are more occasions, and that's how these businesses have to be grown. Second, let's look at the differentiation point. Globally, if you see between broadly three kinds of apparel retailers, if you're a super premium or fast fashion or mass departmental stores, there are very sharp areas of focus. Very, very sharp areas of focus. And this is one of the key reasons why nobody makes money in India, or very little money. So the left two are obviously, as I've written, is Uniqlo and Primark. The other two are very famous Indian brands. Now see their turnovers. These companies are in billions of dollars. An Indian brand which is 0.4 million, amongst the largest therefore. Look at the number of designs they have compared to these global folks. What does this show? So if you see for formal shirts, casual wear, knitwear. In simple English, it means it's all over the place. And that's why each of you in the room don't have any loyalty in apparel. Each of you. Each of your apparel wardrobes have 3 to 4 brands of shirts, 3 to 4 brands of casual shirts, and 3 to 4 brands of knitwear. And that's why our companies are in that shape, because nobody stands for anything. Below this, if you layer, there is a business model aspect, etc., which I'll get in when I get into the profitability piece. But what I want to show through this is we talk about these brands, and that's because they are focused. They appeal to us because we feel that they stand for something. It's intuitive. Sometimes you never note down these numbers, but if any of you go to these brands, it's because of this reason. You expect something. Now moving a little bit into the operational areas to kind of grow your business, even if you don't do any of these things we talked about around women's and focus, etc., is simply how do you do more within the country? If you look at FMCG, that's another area we work on a lot. They have taken a very systematic approach in not classifying urban, non-urban, this, that. They can actually get into the town psychographics and see where fashion will work, where something will work, any product will work, because you can have a small town, but that has a high student population that behaves in a very different way from a retirement town, from a government town, etc. I mean, you can come up with a lot of archetypes. But when we get into the planning level, there are broad macros on which this industry is moving, and my encouragement and advice is to make it much more data-oriented, much more analytics-oriented, and much more customer-back, so that a lot of the merchandise which is being hugely discounted in urban areas can actually go and sell in higher or close to full price in the other areas. Fourth is about digital. This chart was surprising to me. In fact, there's one chart I took off just to not speak on it too much, but Indians, in case you didn't know, and my compare just before me said the same thing, spend the maximum time in the whole world on the phone, which is roughly equivalent to 3.5 hours. At least I'm not surprised. And this also shows, and this is more for quote-unquote our kind of audiences, which are educated, working class people. So this is not for India. They are very gung-ho about using online for apparel. So in a way, I've just given you some data on what you already know. So let's talk about the implications for that. I think the key implication which all of us are trying to think through in our businesses are how do we make this channel appropriate for the different kinds of products. I mean, so should we use this for the regular? Should we use this for fast fashion? Should we use this for a depletion channel, like a discount channel? I think those things have to be put in place so that this can serve a variety of purposes. Again, there are no answers. Different folks can probably use it in different ways. But the fact that most people are in a pilot stage just shows that much more speed is required. I mean, anyway, the business is growing very slowly. And these are things which can actually push it forward because you need to experiment with impulse purchases through these. Why shouldn't somebody just buy a 250 rupee t-shirt? I mean, for heaven's sake, people are changing 15,000 rupee phones every 8 to 9 months. Why can you not attract them with apparel? So anyway, that's a much deeper topic, but that's what this chart was there for. Along with access, different towns, as I said, I've already made the point. And somebody just made the point to me, hey, these things are not working beyond urban areas. My encouragement and point is, while there's nothing called pan-India, we can all do a better job of micro-segmenting India into not just large macro brushes of urban, non-urban, etc., etc. There are at least 100 towns in India where it behaves similarly. A large part of the apparel retailers which go through wholesale understand a large part of that demand as well because they take orders and so on and so forth. So there's a lot more potential in those towns and probably a lot more possibility to differentiate yourselves in those towns and experiment with that a lot more. That's our findings, that's our analysis, and that's what we find across a variety of categories. And this is just not being pushed enough in apparel. That's the point I'm trying to make. So that should be a topic of discussion. Finally, how do you make all these things happen? I think what we should talk about as a group over the next few days is how to make apparel much more business-driven. This is not a business where you need long-haired designers to only say what needs to be done. India probably can't afford those price points and only differentiating through a point of view. We need that to be fed in through proper sourcing, supply chain, replenishments, service levels, tie-ups with the proper mills, with the proper dyeing, and so on and so forth. But my observation is that we have taken a very design-heavy outlook in India. All of us only talk about design. See the entries which you will see which have won. I mean, it's like we are like the #1 designers in the world, right? Designers will make you believe that the mannequins which you see are the dresses you should wear in office. Maybe that's true, maybe that's not. And maybe there's a way you need to buy that and size that to make profits. And the point is, it needs to work like a regular business where planning, sales forecasts, and most importantly, consumer insight has a much larger place than where it is today. Too much of design out, I think, is causing a lot of margin losses. And this is just to nail that point a little bit. So if you see that red line in the middle are the number of SKUs which are giving you 80% of your business. And this is from our absolute work here in India. So as you can see, if you see the top left, 2 fabrics are giving you 80% of your business. Out of the 833 blends, 81 are giving you 80% of your business. And out of 65,000 SKUs, 17,000 are giving you 80% of the business. So this is just a simple funnel chart. All of you can do it in your business. You can represent that in a tree chart on the right-hand side. And the question really is, this is the customer's view, right? This is not A.T. Kearney's view or IFS view. This is what the customer is saying they want. And the question is, how do you do it a season in advance? That's the question that needs to be debated in this forum going forward, right? So if you just put everything together in terms of the future looks bright. But to make that happen, to talk about fields of play, to differentiate yourselves, I mean, at these levels it sounds generic, but we've talked about some of the specifics. how to tailor your assortments to different customers, cities, psychographics, occasions, winning through digital, and working more like an organization to deliver fast fashion or your value proposition, week on week, month on month, quarter on quarter, and to design for cost so that the profitability numbers are there. And you can at least achieve a sell-through, of at least 55, 60% on full price. Right? That should be a key KPI of everything you do, because irrespective then of the growth, you have fortressed your business model.
Hello, I have a question for you.
Yes, sir.
What you have been talking about is really good in terms of what the consumers are looking forward for, what kind of differentiation we can create in the market. But what's also getting important in today's scenario, especially with the brands which are more focused towards apparel and footwear, there's a good amount of talk is going on sustainability. And what are your thought process with regard to sustainability? You touched upon the women's wear, and if you look at the ethnic wear in India, the coloration is still an industry which is coming in from use of colorants, use of chemicals, and if you look at the industry which is working on coloration, you would find still in the ethnic wear, people using a lot of colorants which could have a couple of banned substances which even can cause cancer. So what are your thought process into it, and how do you address this?
Yeah, thank you. My view is customers don't pay for sustainability anywhere in the world so far. There are different...
Sorry to interrupt, but
Sure.
sustainability is not a choice. It's not an option today.
Yeah.
It has to be practiced at the manufacturing level.
Yeah.
And whether the customer pays for it or not,
Yeah.
it has to be practiced. That's my view.
Yeah, no, my view is exactly the same. It needs to be practiced. I'm first coming from the commercial point of how business organizations look at it. The minute they talk about differentiation, there is an implied view around premium. Implied. It may or may not happen. So first is, I want to take that frame away. As you said, it has to be done. It's not a choice. People who own that will benefit in future. So it has to be done. Customers are not paying for it is now the commercial point. So the question is, so what do we do about it? So what we have to do about it is, if you want to make that a part of business practice without losing margin, and I want to get in that margin focus in fashion. It's not only about colors and sustainability and other very good to talk stuff, but which doesn't work in the market, is how do you value yourself to cost? So do you take away some stitches per square centimeter? Do you take away some trims? And those are options which need to be looked at, and those we believe are the way forward, because again, I repeat what you said, sustainability has to be done. But it's not a layer on top of what we are doing today. And that's a business model. To be
Is
looked
that
at.
the one which can create the differential?
Right
Because you're
now,
talking
there is
about
no
margins.
differential. Right now, there is no differential. Right now, companies have to do it for yourselves. That's the fact of the matter. Because if it did matter to the customers, they would have paid you a premium. People are not even paying premium to that extent. It's like less than 0.5% even in food. And food will be ahead of apparel by at least 10 years across countries on these curves. So the point is, you have to do it as a good organization, and there are ways to do it profitably, because 10 years later, somebody else can't claim that from you, because you've already been talking about it. And that's just the a way to look at it.
It's a fascinating discussion. I'm sorry to cut in, but we just want to make space for other people to ask questions as well. Maybe you could take your conversation offline.
Sure. I think we would like to discuss this in
Sure.
person.
Sure. A couple of other questions. Our next set
you guys
is
can
waiting.
grab a
Yeah.
coffee after. There was a gentleman in the front here, I think, who had a
Microphone,
question.
please.
Can we get him a mic?
Hi, Debashish. Great presentation there. So I think the key is less is more. I think that's what you've told me today. And using the competitor comparison, I think it's better to stay focused on core specializations. Using Primark, Uniqlo, and your two Indian counterparts. So my question to you is, how do you appeal to the Indian resident global strivers and create better brand equity? Is that something you could share some of your wisdom on?
I have no wisdom, but I'll just share a couple of things we've learned along the way and through some research. I think the key threat on the globals, do you stay in India? Okay, so the key threat to globals are that will the global brands really overshadow Indian brands? You see, what's happening is when somebody crosses 10 lakh rupees income in India, let's say $25,000, the question is, do you buy the uppermost Indian brand or do you buy the lowest end of the highest global brand? It's happening in automobiles, it's happening in watches, it's happening across the categories. Because there's no dearth of money, you'll only save less. I mean, if you buy a $1,000 watch or you buy a $5,000 watch, you're just going to be poorer by $4,000. So the question is not that you don't have the money, the question is of the choice. And that is a big branding point which Indian retailers have to think through more seriously. Because right now they're a lot in the operational throes of just making the business work, right? But that is a real threat that has happened across the board and has happened in as mundane categories like food and coffee, right? It's just an Indian mentality. Maybe. Maybe it's not. Maybe we have to be coached and counseled. The second part is, what do these strivers do? The strivers probably, and I think this is a split house. I don't think A.T. Kearney has a house view or I don't have a view. In India, we're trying to create Indian brands. And even in fashion, if you really see, fashion brands are very, very origin dependent. You have Italian brands, you have European brands, you have a few American brands. I think the challenge for all of us is to create that aspirational Indian brands, which drivers are absolutely comfortable doing it. Right now, that is not there. And again, I'm saying it's across categories because different industries are in different life cycles. So in short, what I'm saying is that the global brand threat is real, and not playing in that for an Indian brand is a real choice. It might be a profitable choice, no problem, because they just have a heritage which is difficult to overpower. On the Indian side, there is this now very sizable population who will spend, and I think the huge challenge and excitement is to create an Indian brand of that stature.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Debashish. A warm round of applause, please, for what's been a very insightful kickoff to India Fashion Forum 16.